July 15, 1944, Port of Boston. The metallic screech of the gangway striking the dock cut through the humid afternoon air. Oberleutnant Klaus Miller, 28 years old, an Iron Cross recipient of the Wehrmacht, stepped onto American soil. His left arm was in a makeshift sling, ribs screaming with each breath, the shrapnel wound in his shoulder barely covered and beginning to fester. Each movement brought searing pain, a reminder that his body was a broken ledger of the war. He expected to die here, perhaps not today, perhaps not tomorrow, but death was inevitable. Prisoners died. It was the natural order, a law Miller had enforced himself in Poland, in Ukraine, in a dozen nameless villages. The rules had always been simple. The strong survived, the weak perished, and the Untermenschen, the subhumans, simply disappeared. The sun beat down on the pier, reflecting off the water in blinding sheets. Miller squinted, trying to focus through the haze of fever and pain. Around him, fellow prisoners shuffled forward in a ragged, silent line. 200 men, once gods of war, now reduced to livestock, herded toward whatever fate the Americans had prepared. Miller steeled himself for the degradation, for the chaos and filth that Goebbels had promised awaited them in this mongrel nation of gangsters and degenerates. And then he saw him. Standing at the base of the gangway, clipboard in hand, was a sergeant in a perfectly pressed American uniform, calm, deliberate, authoritative. And the sergeant was black, not off to the side, not in some menial role, not carrying luggage or sweeping floors, but in command. White American soldiers followed his directions unquestioningly. Miller froze. The prisoner behind him bumped into his wounded shoulder, sending white-hot pain racing through his body. Yet he barely noticed. His mind had gone blank. Every certainty, every ideological foundation seemed to dissolve in that moment. The journey to this moment had begun 72 hours earlier in a wheat field outside Saint-Lô, Normandy. Miller's company had been holding a crossroads, a post they could barely defend, with dwindling ammunition and men who had not slept in 4 days. The arrogant American artillery barrage that afternoon had been unlike anything Miller had experienced. It was not the sporadic Russian shelling of a desperate army. It was a sustained, methodical destruction, precise, relentless, a resource-intensive display of power that rendered theories of German will or racial superiority meaningless. Shrapnel had found him when he had been foolish enough to look over the edge of his foxhole. He remembered the sound, a wet thunk, then nothing but white light and agony. When he woke, it was dark, and American voices surrounded him. He had expected a bullet. Instead, rough but competent hands lifted him, carried him to an aid station, and laid him on a stretcher. A young medic, white, chewing gum with casual aggression, cut away his uniform and irrigated the wound with a solution that burned like fire. "You're lucky," the medic said in accented German. "Another inch and this would have hit your lung." The word seemed absurd, almost mocking. But over the next 48 hours, as Miller was moved from aid station to field hospital to transport ship, the absurdity compounded. At the field hospital, a Jewish surgeon, Miller would learn later, had operated on his shoulder within 6 hours. No waiting, no triage lists placing prisoners beneath dogs. Immediate, competent medical care. They had treated his body as if it mattered. They had extracted the shrapnel, cleaned the wound, stitched him together, administered painkillers and antibiotics. Miller did not thank them. He could not. His throat closed around words that never formed. Confusion overwhelmed him, drowning any attempt at gratitude or understanding. That confusion, however, was nothing compared to what he would feel on the Boston dock, staring at Sergeant Johnson and the inversion of the world as he had known it. "Move along," the sergeant said. Another soldier, a white corporal, gestured impatiently at the bottleneck Miller had created. "Come on, Jerry, we ain't got all day." Miller stumbled forward, eyes locked on Sergeant Johnson. The sergeant glanced up briefly, met his stare with professional disinterest, and returned to his clipboard, as if everything was normal, as if the universe had not just inverted itself around Miller. Other German officers reacted differently. Hauptmann Weber, a veteran of the Afrika Korps, flushed red, jaw working silently in disbelief. Lieutenant Brown, only 22, whispered a prayer or curse. Oberst Hartmann, senior officer, maintained a frozen mask of contempt, the face of unyielding ideology confronted with undeniable reality. They were processed quickly, names taken, possessions logged, medical conditions noted. Sergeant Johnson never raised his voice. His authority was calm, quiet, unquestioned. A young white private fumbled with paperwork. Johnson corrected him with a simple word. The private complied. The authority was in Johnson's competence, not in the color of his skin, a concept alien to his ingrained worldview. The journey to Camp Shelby, Mississippi, lasted 3 days. Prisoners rode in regular passenger cars. There were seats, food, not meager rations, but sandwiches, fruit, coffee. Guards were watchful, but not cruel. When an older prisoner suffered chest pains, the train stopped, a doctor summoned, and the man survived. Each act of ordinary decency hammered at the foundation of Nazi ideology.
Inside the cars, conversations oscillated between silence and furious whispering. The presence of black soldiers in command positions became an obsessive topic. Oberst Hartmann insisted the situation was proof of American weakness. Weber, Afrika Korps veteran, muttered doubts. If their system was wrong, how were they winning the war? No one had a satisfying answer. Camp Shelby sprawled across thousands of acres, a city of tents and wooden barracks. From behind barbed wire, prisoners observed American soldiers drilling, supply convoys rolling, the casual abundance that characterized every aspect of American military life. Black soldiers were integral, not as menial laborers, but as functioning, competent members of the system. MPs directed traffic, supply sergeants coordinated logistics, instructors led exercises. Segregation existed, but it did not erase competence or authority. For Miller, the hardest moments came during medical call. His shoulder required ongoing care. Corpsmen rotated through the POW ward, including a black man named Williams from Georgia. The first time Williams cleaned his wound, Miller froze. Williams noticed. "I know this is strange for you," he said quietly. "I'm good at my job. I'm going to take care of you." He did. Every week, every dressing change, every cleaning, performed with quiet skill and concern. No judgment, no condescension. It was unbearable, not cruelty, but the opposite. His ideology, his moral certainty, was being dismantled by competence, by simple human decency. In October, 4 months into captivity, Miller volunteered for a work detail in the fall harvest. The detail was led by Staff Sergeant Howard Carter, a black man from Alabama. Carter commanded with calm efficiency. On the 3rd day, a white private disputed the lunch schedule. Carter did not raise his voice. "Private Hawkins, we take lunch at 12. Are we clear?" The private flushed, swallowed, and complied. Miller stood 20 feet away, carrying a bushel of apples, feeling something crack in his chest. The racial hierarchy he had internalized, the essence of Nazi ideology, was revealed as absurd. Authority came from rank, experience, and competence, not race. That night, lying on his bunk, Miller tried to reconstruct his worldview. It was like assembling a puzzle when half the pieces were from another box. Reality, as he was learning, did not care about ideology. The months that followed were not smooth. Prisoners debated fiercely. Oberst Hartmann doubled down,
asserting Germany would prevail. Younger men questioned openly. Miller found himself in the middle, caught between disbelief and reluctant acceptance. The cognitive dissonance was physically painful. Letters from home intensified the confusion. His mother described bombed cities, deaths of neighbors, destruction of Hamburg. She expressed fear, exhaustion, and hope that Miller would return to build something different. His mother, once an ardent Nazi supporter, was losing faith. If she could doubt, what certainty could remain? May 1945 brought Germany's surrender. Hitler dead, the Reich finished. Reactions in the barracks were complex. Some wept, others silent, a few attempted suicide. Guards intervened, monitored the unstable, processed the rest. Miller reflected on the Jewish surgeon, Williams, Carter, Sergeant Johnson. He understood his own complicity, the acts he had witnessed, the obedience he had given. The realization did not come dramatically. It was slow, bitter, unavoidable. He had spent years serving a lie. The truth had been revealed by those his ideology deemed unworthy. Repatriation came slowly. Miller, a junior officer with no role in atrocities, was classified for early release. Autumn 1945, he boarded a ship back to Germany. He stood at the rail, watching the American coastline recede, pondering the lessons learned. The wounds on his shoulder healed. The wounds in his understanding remained. A permanent reminder that ideology can blind, and that human worth is revealed through action, not rhetoric. Back in Hamburg, the city partially destroyed, his mother living in 2 rooms, Miller began to share his experiences, piecemeal, cautiously. He spoke of black sergeants, Jewish surgeons, and humane captors. Sometimes his mother argued, more often she nodded. Germany itself began reconstruction, physical, moral, societal. Miller engaged in rebuilding efforts. He worked alongside former prisoners, forced laborers, and civilians. He challenged old comrades when ideology resurfaced, arguing the war had proven these ideas catastrophically wrong. He became a teacher, passing on lessons of morality, authority, and human dignity. In 1950, attending a lecture on American occupation and the Marshall Plan, he reflected on integration policies and racial inclusion, recognizing that the lessons he had seen in Mississippi were part of a broader, ongoing struggle for justice. He understood that progress required conscious effort. Decades later, in an interview at 86, he recalled Sergeant Johnson on the Boston dock. A single moment, a single act of competence and authority had shattered his worldview, forcing him to confront uncomfortable truths. Miller died 3 months later, in his sleep, in a rebuilt city, leaving a legacy of teaching, reflection, and the acknowledgement that some truths must be learned painfully. The story of German POWs encountering Black American soldiers is a footnote in history, but for Miller, it defined the moral core of his life. Human worth, he had learned, could not be determined by ideology, skin color, or propaganda. It was demonstrated through action, competence, and dignity. Lessons each generation must relearn to prevent the past from repeating itself.